We've looked at the direct object. Now we're going to take a look at the indirect object. It must appear with the direct object, and it names the person or thing to which something is given or done. An indirect object always precedes the direct object in a sentence. That's why it's important for you to know the direct object. If you don't know the direct object, you're really going to have a hard time with the indirect object. You can never have an indirect object without the direct object. And then the prepositions to and for are understood with the indirect object. If I said sit down, what's the subject of that sentence? It's you. You is understood to be in front of it. Which means for a simple test to see if you've located the indirect object, you should be able to insert to or for in front of it, and the sentence will still make sense. I'll show you some examples here shortly. And then indirect objects are never part of the basic sentence pattern. So when I ask you to write down the basic sentence pattern, never ever include the indirect object. The direct object is part of the basic sentence pattern, but not the indirect object. So let's take a look at this example here. Principal is our subject. Gave is the predicate. Class is the indirect object. Period is the direct object. Now, you remember when I said you can insert a form of to or for to test it? I could say the principal gave to the class a free period. Notice also that the indirect object will precede the direct object. So let's take a look at number 2. Ships is the subject. Brought is the predicate. People answers what. Food and clothing is the direct object. Notice that it has the word and, so this is compound. And people is the indirect object. Remember, you can test it by inserting to or for. She brought to the people food and clothing. Number 3, the Thespian Club gave the school a great movie. So the Thespian Club is our subject, or just club, should be just club. No, sorry, it is Thespian Club, because it's all one thing. Gave is the predicate. School is a what. And the movie is a what. Remember, the indirect object will precede the direct object. The baker made my mother several loaves of bread. So I've got baker, which is the subject. Made is the predicate. Mother answers who. And then loaves is what. So remember, the indirect object precedes the direct object. This is the direct object. That's the indirect object. Alright, final example. The FBI sent Mr. Matthews a warning. FBI is the subject. Sent is the predicate. Mr. Matthews is who. Warning is a what. Again, the indirect object precedes the direct object. So this is the indirect object, this is the direct object. And you can test it by inserting a form of to or for. So in this one, the FBI sent to Mr. Matthews a warning, and it still makes sense because the to or for are understood to be there. The Thespian Club gave to the school a great movie. In this exercise, write only the indirect object. You don't have to label and break everything down. I wanted you to do that in the previous one to kind of get in the habit to make sure you understood how to locate the indirect object. If there isn't one, then simply write the word none. So number one, I later wrote my brother an explanation for my behavior. Now, the subject is I, wrote is the predicate, brother is who, explanation is what. So this is my direct object, this is the indirect object. So the answer to that one would just be brother. In the morning, Molly told Willie and Jeff the news. In the morning is a prepositional phrase. We could throw that out. Molly is the subject. What did she do? Told is the predicate. Willie and Jeff, we have, remember the word and is compound. So this is who. And then news is what. So news is the direct object. Willie and Jeff are the indirect object. So the answer would just be Willie, Jeff. Number 4, can you lend me $1? This in this one, you is the subject, lend is the predicate, me is who, dollar is what. So this is your indirect object, this is your direct object. He gave Chuck and Steve their desserts. He is the subject, gave is the predicate, Chuck and Steve are the indirect object, desserts is the direct object. So all you would write is Chuck, Steve. So do all of those 1 through 44